The night I opened the locked suitcase my husband guarded like it held his own heartbeat, I expected to find proof of another woman. I was ready for lipstick perfume, maybe a hotel receipt. What I was not ready for was my name printed on legal papers I had never signed, tucked beneath a silk blouse that did not belong to me. Daniel had not only hidden his affair in my guest room, he had hidden a plan to take the one thing he knew I could not bear to lose. If you have ever felt your heart warning you before your mind had proof, I hope you stay with me until the end. Please like this video if you believe the truth always finds its way out. Subscribe if emotional family stories speak to you, and comment what you would have done in my place. Also, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. Reading your words reminds me that none of us has to face betrayal alone. If someone had asked me 6 months earlier whether I trusted my husband, I would have answered without hesitation. With my life. That is the painful thing about betrayal. It does not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it walks into your home wearing the same face you have kissed goodnight for 32 years. Sometimes it sits across from you at breakfast, drinks coffee from the mug your daughter bought for Father's Day, and asks if you remembered to take your vitamins. My name is Cynthia Martinez. I was 64 years old when I finally understood that the man I loved had not simply drifted away from me. He had been building a wall between us brick by brick while I was still trying to keep the house warm. Daniel and I lived in a quiet neighborhood on the northwest side of San Antonio, Texas. Our home had pale stone walls, a small front porch, and a backyard where my mother once grew rosemary and tomatoes. The house had belonged to my parents before it became mine. After they passed, Daniel and I raised our daughter Lauren there. Every room carried a memory. The kitchen still had the tile my father installed himself. The hallway held framed photos of Lauren from babyhood to her wedding day. The guest room at the end of the hall had once been the happiest room in the house. Lauren slept there when she came home from college. Our grandchildren used to pile onto the bed during Christmas visits, laughing under blankets and asking me for one more bedtime story. For years, that room meant family. Then, Daniel put a lock on it. At first, I told myself not to overreact. He said he needed a place for old work files. Daniel had spent most of his career managing commercial construction projects, and after retirement, he still did occasional consulting. He told me some documents were confidential. "Identity theft is everywhere now," he said, tightening the screws on the new lock while I stood in the hallway. I remember the way he said it. Calm, reasonable, like I was silly for even wondering. So I nodded. That was something I had become very good at in my marriage. Nodding. Letting small things pass. Choosing peace because arguing felt childish after so many years together. But peace can become dangerous when only one person is protecting it. The first real change I noticed was his phone. Daniel used to leave it everywhere. On the kitchen counter, beside the recliner, sometimes even in the garage next to his toolbox. I used to tease him that one day he would lose it inside the freezer. Then suddenly the phone never left his pocket. If it buzzed, he checked it immediately. If I walked into the room, he turned the screen down. If he was texting and heard my footsteps, his thumb moved fast, closing whatever was open. One morning, I asked him to check the weather because my phone was charging. He placed one hand over his pocket and said battery's low, but I had watched him unplug it 10 minutes earlier. I did not accuse him. I only looked at him a second too long. He smiled. "What?" Nothing, I said. And that was the beginning of many nothings. Nothing when he started taking long drives. Nothing when he came home smelling faintly of perfume. Nothing when he bought new shirts and claimed he had owned them for years. Nothing when he began doing his own laundry after 3 decades of tossing everything into the same basket with mine. One afternoon, I found a dry cleaning receipt tucked behind the detergent. Daniel's dress shirt was listed beside a women's silk blouse. I stared at the receipt until the words seemed to blur. Daniel walked in and saw it in my hand. "They mixed up somebody else's order," he said quickly. Too quickly. He reached for the receipt and I let him take it. That was the first time I remember thinking my husband is lying to me. Not wondering. Knowing. But knowing something in your heart and proving it in the real world are two different kinds of pain. Daniel had always been respected. At church, people shook his hand and called him dependable. Neighbors asked him for advice about repairs. Lauren adored him. To everyone else, Daniel Martinez was the steady husband, the patient father, the man who always showed up with a smile. And I was becoming little by little the wife who worried too much. He started saying that often. "You worry too much, Cynthia? You're imagining things. You already asked me that." At first it sounded harmless. Then it became sharper. If I misplaced my reading glasses, he sighed. "See, this is what I mean." If I forgot why I had walked into the pantry, he laughed and said, "Getting older catches up with all of us." One evening at dinner with friends from church, he told everyone I had left the stove on the week before. Everyone laughed gently. My face burned because it was not true. On the drive home, I said, "Why would you tell them that?" He kept both hands on the wheel. It was just a joke. It didn't happen. He glanced at me tired and irritated. "You're becoming very sensitive." That sentence silenced me more than yelling would have, because a small part of me wondered if he was right. That is how manipulation works. It does not always break you. Sometimes it trains you to doubt the sound of your own voice. The guest room became his private territory. If I vacuumed near the door, he appeared. If I asked whether the bedding needed washing, he said he had already handled it. If Lauren mentioned visiting Daniel quickly, suggested she stay at a hotel so she could rest better. That hurt me. Lauren did not notice. She had her own life in Austin with her husband Michael and their 2 children. She called every Sunday evening, usually while folding laundry or driving one of the kids to practice. I did not want to burden her with suspicions. What could I say? Your father locked the guest room. Your father guards his phone. Your father smells like another woman. I had no proof. Only a growing ache in my chest every time Daniel walked toward the end of the hallway. Then one night, everything changed. It was a little after 2 in the morning when I woke up thirsty. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel important. I slipped out of bed and walked toward the kitchen. As I passed the hallway, I saw a thin line of light beneath the guest room door. Daniel was inside. I stopped. From behind the door came the soft scrape of something heavy sliding across the floor. Then a zipper. Then the unmistakable click of a lock. My skin went cold. A moment later, the door opened. Daniel stepped out and froze when he saw me. "Cynthia," he said, pressing a hand to his chest. "You scared me." I looked past him, but the room behind him was already dark. "What are you doing in there?" His face changed. "Not much. Just enough. Looking for tax records." At 2 in the morning, he smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Couldn't sleep. Neither could I after that. I lay beside him until sunrise, listening to his breathing, wondering when my home had turned into a place with locked doors and whispered secrets. And for the first time, I understood that the guest room was not protecting old files. It was protecting Daniel. From me. The first time I saw the woman, I almost convinced myself she was no one important. That is what frightened me later. Not that she was in my house, not that Daniel lied, but that my first instinct even then was to protect him from the truth instead of protecting myself from his betrayal. It happened on a Thursday afternoon after my regular checkup. My doctor's office was only 20 minutes away, and I had expected to be there much longer. But the appointment finished early. My blood pressure was good, my labs looked fine, and Dr. Patel smiled as she told me I was healthier than many women 10 years younger. I remember that clearly because 2 hours later, Daniel would make me feel as if I could no longer trust my own eyes. The Texas sun was bright that day, the kind that turns every windshield into a mirror. I drove home slowly, thinking about stopping for groceries, then decided I was too tired. I wanted a glass of iced tea, my slippers, and maybe half an hour in my sewing chair. When I turned into our street, I noticed a silver Lexus parked 2 houses down. It was not unusual for neighbors to have visitors, but something about the car caught my attention. It was too carefully parked, tucked close to the curb beneath the shade of an oak tree, as if the driver did not want it noticed from my driveway. I pulled into the garage, turned off the engine, and gathered my purse. Before I could step inside through the laundry room door, I heard the backyard gate click. I froze. Our backyard gate had a particular sound because Daniel had never fixed the latch properly. It gave a sharp little scrape before closing. I knew that sound as well as I knew the creak in our bedroom floor. At first, I thought maybe Daniel had hired someone to trim the trees. Then I saw her. A woman came around the side of the house, moving quickly but not running. She looked to be in her early 40s, maybe younger, with sleek auburn hair pulled into a low bun and oversized sunglasses covering half her face. She wore cream-colored slacks, a fitted navy blouse, and heels too polished for yard work. In one hand, she carried a leather purse. In the other, she held something small and dark. A key fob. She stopped when she saw me. For one long second, neither of us spoke. Her face changed first. Not fear exactly. Recognition. As if she knew who I was before I knew who she was. "Can I help you?" I asked. My voice sounded strange. Thin. Too polite. She slid the sunglasses down just enough for me to see her eyes. They were sharp, assessing me quickly from my gray cardigan to my sensible shoes. "Oh," she said. "You must be Cynthia." My stomach tightened. "Not Mrs. Martinez. Not ma'am. Cynthia." A stranger standing outside my own home said my first name as though she had heard it many times. Before I could ask how she knew me, Daniel appeared at the back door. His expression was the most honest thing I had seen on his face in weeks. Panic. It flashed across him so quickly that another person might have missed it. But after 32 years of marriage, I knew Daniel's face. I knew his relaxed smile, his church smile, his business smile, his irritated smile. This was none of them. "Cynthia," he said, "you're home early." The woman stepped back slightly. I looked from her to Daniel. "I finished early." Daniel wiped his hands on a towel, though his hands were not wet. "This is Vanessa Cole. She is helping me look at some ideas for the guest room." "The guest room." Vanessa smiled. It was smooth, practiced, the kind of smile that belonged in open houses and charity luncheons. "I do interior consulting," she said. "Daniel mentioned you might want to refresh the space." Daniel nodded quickly. "I was going to surprise you." A surprise. That word landed between us like a cheap blanket thrown over a broken window. I looked toward the back door. "Why did she leave through the gate?" Daniel's jaw tightened. Vanessa answered before he could. "I parked down the street. Didn't want to block your driveway." There was nothing technically impossible about that explanation. That was the problem with good lies. They were not absurd. They were just thin enough to make you look unreasonable if you pushed. I forced a smile. "How thoughtful." Vanessa slipped her sunglasses back into place. "It was nice meeting you, Cynthia." Again, my first name. She walked past me, her perfume trailing behind her like something expensive and sweet. I watched her reach the silver Lexus, unlock it, and drive away without looking back. Daniel stayed in the doorway. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he sighed. "Now you've ruined the surprise." I turned toward him. "What surprise? I told you." "The guest room. You hired a woman I've never met to decorate a room I'm not allowed to enter." His face hardened. "You make it sound sinister." "I didn't make anything sound like anything. I'm asking a question. You came home early and startled us both." "Us." It was such a small word, but I heard it. I stepped into the house past him and entered the kitchen. The air inside carried that same perfume, not faintly, strongly, as if Vanessa Cole had not merely stepped inside for a few minutes, but had spent time there. Daniel followed me. "You're upset. I'm confused. There's nothing to be confused about." "Then show me the guest room." Silence. He looked toward the hallway. "Not today." That answer told me more than any confession could have. "Why not today?" "Because it isn't ready." "Daniel, it's a room, not a wedding dress." His eyes narrowed. "You're determined to turn something nice into an accusation." Something inside me shrank the way it always did when his voice took on that calm disappointment. For years that tone had made me back down. It suggested I was emotional, dramatic, ungrateful. But this time I remembered the way Vanessa had said my name. "I want to know why a stranger was in my house." "She is not a stranger to me," he snapped. Then he stopped. Too late. The words hung there. He heard them. I heard them. His face softened immediately. "I mean professionally. I know her professionally." I stared at him. How long have you known her professionally?" He looked away. "A few months." Months. The locked guest room had started a few months earlier. The phone secrecy had started a few months earlier. The long drives, the new shirts, the laundry, the perfume. All of it had started a few months earlier. I walked to the sink and poured myself a glass of water, mostly to keep my hands busy. Daniel came closer. "Cynthia, don't do this. Don't let your imagination hurt us." There it was again. My imagination. As if I had imagined the woman walking out of my backyard. As if I had imagined his panic. As if I had imagined the perfume still breathing in my kitchen. I drank the water slowly. After Daniel left for what he called an errand, I stood in the hallway outside the guest room. The door was locked, of course. I placed my palm against it. The wood felt cool. I do not know how long I stood there. Finally, I went to the laundry room to gather towels. That was when I saw it. A white handkerchief tucked behind the wicker basket. It was not mine. I picked it up with 2 fingers. The fabric was soft, embroidered at one corner with a small silver V. V. Vanessa. For the first time, I did not cry. I folded the handkerchief carefully and placed it in the back of my sewing drawer, beneath a packet of unused needles. Then I sat at the kitchen table until the late afternoon shadows stretched across the floor. When Daniel came home, I said nothing. I smiled. I warmed his dinner. I asked about his errand. And while he lied to me with that familiar face, I finally understood something important. A woman had walked out of my house through the back gate, but the real stranger was sitting across from me at the table. After Vanessa Cole walked out of my backyard, the guest room stopped being just a locked door. It became a presence. Every time I passed the hallway, I felt it watching me. That sounds strange, I know. A room cannot watch anyone. But secrets can. Lies can. And whatever Daniel had hidden behind that door had begun to breathe inside my house. For 2 days, I said nothing about the handkerchief. I kept it tucked beneath the needles in my sewing drawer, folded so neatly that even I could pretend it was only fabric. But every time I opened that drawer, the silver V caught the light and my chest tightened. "Vanessa." I had repeated her name in my mind so many times that it no longer sounded like a name. It sounded like an answer I did not want. Daniel behaved as if nothing had happened. That made it worse. He kissed my cheek in the morning. He asked if I wanted eggs. He carried the trash to the curb. He sat in his recliner after dinner and watched the evening news with his shoes off as though he had not brought another woman into the home my parents left me. At first, I thought perhaps he would become more careful. Instead, he became bolder. The guest room door remained locked, but signs of life began appearing around it. A fresh towel in the hallway hamper, though I had not used that bathroom. A faint ring of red lipstick on a wine glass Daniel claimed had been mine. The smell of perfume rising from the carpet when the afternoon sun warmed the hall. One morning, I found the guest bathroom trash emptied, even though I had not touched it. Daniel had never cared about bathroom trash in 32 years of marriage. Suddenly, he was a man obsessed with tidiness. "Did someone come over yesterday?" I asked him at breakfast. He lowered the newspaper slowly. "No." The guest bathroom trash was empty. "So I didn't empty it. Maybe you did and forgot." He returned to the paper. "Just like that. Maybe you did and forgot." 5 words. Quiet, casual, poisonous. I stared at him across the table. The Daniel I had married used to notice when I was upset. He used to reach for my hand. Now he hid behind newsprint and made me feel like a confused old woman in my own kitchen. "I did not forget," I said. He folded the paper with a sigh. "Cynthia, I'm not doing this again." "Doing what?" "This suspicion, this mood, it is exhausting. Exhausting! As if I were the burden, as if my questions were the betrayal, not his locked door." I stood and carried my coffee cup to the sink. My hands were steady, but inside I felt something trembling. That afternoon, Daniel left for a consulting meeting. He wore a navy shirt I had never seen before and polished brown shoes that belonged more in a restaurant than on a construction site. The moment his truck backed out of the driveway, I walked to the guest room. The lock was new brass and shining. I tried the knob anyway. Locked. Of course. I told myself I only wanted to confirm it. But the truth was, I wanted to open it so badly my fingers ached. I went to the kitchen drawer where we kept old keys. There were dozens. Mailbox keys, luggage keys, keys to doors from houses we had not lived in for decades. I tried 3 before realizing Daniel would never be careless enough to use something we already had. Then I heard a car outside. My heart jumped. I dropped the keys back into the drawer and hurried to the sink as Daniel's truck rolled into the driveway. He came in through the garage sooner than expected. His eyes went straight to the hallway, then to me. "What are you doing?" I turned on the faucet. "Washing a cup." He looked at the drawer. It was still slightly open. Something dark crossed his face. He walked over and pushed it shut with 2 fingers. "You looking for something?" "No." "Don't lie to me." The sharpness in his voice stunned me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he smiled, but it was too late. I had seen what lived underneath. "I only mean," he said softly, "you've been jumpy lately." I dried my hands. "Maybe I have reason to be." He stepped closer. "Do you—" It was not a question. It was a warning. That night, I lay awake beside him while he slept heavily, one hand tucked beneath his pillow. I knew what was there before I ever saw it. The keys. Daniel had started sleeping with the guest room keys under his pillow. The realization made my stomach twist. A faithful man did not sleep on keys. A man with nothing to hide did not guard a guest room like a vault. 2 nights later, I got my chance to see inside. Daniel had gone to shower. I was folding laundry in the bedroom when I heard his phone ring from the nightstand. For once, he had forgotten to take it with him. The screen lit up. I did not touch it. I only looked. The caller ID showed no name, just initials, VC. My mouth went dry. The phone buzzed again and again, vibrating against the wood. From the bathroom came the sound of running water. Before I could decide what to do, the call stopped. Then a message appeared. I saw only the preview. "Is she still asking about the room?" My knees nearly weakened beneath me. The bathroom water shut off. I stepped back quickly and picked up one of Daniel's shirts, pretending to fold it. He came out with a towel around his shoulders, saw the phone, and snatched it up. "Who called?" I asked. "No one. No one has initials now." His eyes hardened. "You looked at my phone." It lit up. "You looked at my phone," he repeated. The anger in his face was sudden and ugly. "You leave your phone in plain sight. That does not give you the right to spy on me." I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the cruelty of it was so complete. He had another woman asking about my guest room, and somehow I was the one on trial. "Who is VC?" I asked. He stared at me for 3 seconds too long. A contractor named Vanessa Cole." His lips pressed together. "You are embarrassing yourself." There it was. The line he crossed without hesitation. Not lying, not explaining, not comforting, humiliating. "You brought her into my house," I said. "Our house." "My parents' house," I answered before I could stop myself. His face changed. Just slightly. But I saw it. My words had touched something deeper than guilt. They had touched money, control, ownership. Daniel took one step closer, his voice low. "You need to be careful, Cynthia. You're starting to sound unstable." Unstable! The word hit me harder than any confession would have, because suddenly all those little jokes came back to me. The forgotten glasses, the stove story, the comments at church, the way he told Lauren I was anxious, the way he corrected me in front of others. He was not only hiding something, he was preparing people not to believe me when I found it. I looked at the man I had loved for 32 years, and for the first time I felt more than grief. I felt fear. Daniel seemed to sense it because his voice softened. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have said that. But apologies can be another kind of door one meant to close before truth escapes." He reached for my hand. I let him hold it. His palm was warm, familiar. That was the cruelest part. The same hand that had held mine through my mother's funeral was now holding mine while hiding another woman behind a locked door. The next morning, Daniel left early. Before he went, he checked the guest room lock twice. I watched from the kitchen. He did not know I was watching. He tugged the knob once, then again, then patted his pocket to make sure the keys were there. After he drove away, I walked down the hallway and stood before the door. I did not try to open it this time. I only listened. The house was silent. Still, I could almost hear everything he had hidden from me. The wine glass, the towel, the perfume, the message, the word unstable. I placed my hand flat against the door. "I know," I whispered. And even though I still did not know everything, something inside me had changed. I was no longer trying to convince myself Daniel was innocent. I was trying to understand how dangerous he had become. The first time I saw the black suitcase, Daniel was carrying it like a man carrying evidence away from a crime scene. It was a Tuesday evening just after sunset. The sky outside had turned that soft purple color San Antonio gets in early spring, and I was standing at the kitchen counter cutting vegetables for soup. Daniel had told me earlier that he was going to meet a former colleague for coffee. He had been gone nearly 4 hours. When I heard the garage door open, I did what I had done for 32 years. I looked toward the entryway, expecting my husband to step in with his keys, his phone, and maybe some small complaint about traffic. Instead, he came in holding a black suitcase. It was not large enough for a long trip, but it was too big to be nothing. Hard shell, glossy, expensive looking. The kind of suitcase that rolled smoothly and locked tight. Daniel did not see me at first. He moved quickly across the kitchen entrance and headed straight toward the hallway. "Daniel." He stopped so suddenly the suitcase bumped against his leg. For half a second, his face went blank. Then he smiled. "Cynthia, I didn't know you were in here." "In the kitchen," I asked. He looked annoyed before he managed to hide it. I thought you were resting." My eyes dropped to the suitcase. "What is that, work materials? Work materials in a suitcase?" It was easier to carry. He shifted his body so the suitcase was partly behind him. That one movement told me he did not want me looking at it. I set the knife down carefully. "Where did it come from?" "A storage unit." I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. We did not have a storage unit. "Since when do we have a storage unit?" His jaw tightened. "It's not ours. It belongs to a client. A client lets you bring their files into our house. They're not files, Cynthia. They're samples. Flooring samples, cabinet hardware, things like that." He spoke with that tired patience he used whenever he wanted me to feel foolish. But I was looking at the suitcase handle. There was a small leather tag attached to it. Cream-colored. New. Before I could read it clearly, Daniel turned the suitcase away from me. "I'm putting this in the guest room." "Of course you are." The words slipped out before I could soften them. He stared at me. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means everything private goes into that room now." His nostrils flared. "I'm not having another argument about this. I'm not arguing. I'm asking what's in the suitcase. I told you." "No, you gave me an answer." "That's not the same thing." For a moment I saw anger rise behind his eyes. Not irritation. Anger. The kind that makes a room feel smaller. Then he lowered his voice. "You need to stop this." "Stop what?" "Acting suspicious. Searching for problems. Treating me like a criminal." The word criminal hung between us. I had not used it. He had. I looked again at the suitcase. There was something almost alive about the way he guarded it, one hand gripping the handle, the other resting near the lock. "I want to see inside," I said. Daniel laughed once, coldly. "You want to inspect my work materials now?" Yes. His face hardened. No. The answer came too fast, too final. I stepped toward him. Daniel, open it. He pulled the suitcase back. No. We stood in the kitchen I had cooked in for decades, beneath the light fixture my father installed when I was a teenager, and I suddenly felt like an intruder asking permission to breathe. Why are you afraid to open it? That question changed him. His expression shifted from anger to something sharper. Not fear exactly, more like calculation. I am not afraid, he said. I am tired of being interrogated by my own wife. If there is nothing inside that would hurt me, open it. He leaned closer. You are hurting yourself. There it was again. The way he could turn my pain into my fault. I reached for the suitcase handle. I do not know what I expected. Maybe that he would pull it away. Maybe that he would finally give in. Instead, Daniel grabbed my wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to shock me. Don't, he said. One word. Low. Controlled. My whole body went still. In all our years together, Daniel had never handled me like that. We had argued, we had slammed doors, we had gone to bed angry. But he had never used his strength to stop me from touching something in my own home. I looked down at his hand wrapped around my wrist. Then I looked at his face. He released me slowly. I'm sorry, he said. But his eyes were not sorry. They were warning me. I took a step back. He picked up the suitcase and walked down the hall. I followed at a distance, not because I meant to, but because I could not look away. He unlocked the guest room door with a small key from his pocket, stepped inside, and blocked my view with his body. I heard the suitcase wheels cross the floor, then a heavy thud. He came out less than a minute later and locked the door behind him. Then he tested the knob. Twice. That night I noticed a red mark on my wrist where his fingers had been. I stood in the bathroom staring at it under the bright mirror light. It faded within an hour, but something in me did not. The next morning, Daniel acted gentle. Too gentle. He made coffee before I came downstairs. He brought me toast with butter. He kissed the top of my head and said he had been under stress. I should not have snapped yesterday, he said. You grabbed me. His face fell into a practiced expression of regret. I know. I hate myself for that. For a moment, the old part of me wanted to comfort him. That part still remembered the young man who held my hand in a hospital waiting room when Lauren was born, the husband who cried at my mother's funeral, the father who built a dollhouse on Christmas Eve because the one we ordered arrived broken. But the woman sitting at the kitchen table now remembered the suitcase. What's in it? I asked. He closed his eyes. Please don't start. Just answer me. It belongs to Vanessa. The room went silent. He opened his eyes quickly as if realizing he had said too much. Vanessa Cole. I asked. She left some design materials, that's all. Why would her design materials be in a locked suitcase under our guest room bed? I didn't say it was under the bed. No, he had not. But now I knew. I kept my face still. Daniel watched me carefully. I'm serious, Cynthia. You're making this bigger than it is. How big is it? He stood. I have an appointment. He left his coffee half finished. After he drove away, I went straight to the hallway. I did not try the door. I already knew it was locked. Instead, I knelt on the floor and looked beneath the small gap at the bottom. There was not much to see. A strip of carpet, a shadow, the faint outline of something dark beneath the bed, the suitcase. I stayed there until my knees hurt. That afternoon, I searched the house for keys again. Not the kitchen drawer this time. I checked Daniel's desk, old boxes in the garage, the junk cabinet, the bowl near the front door. Nothing. Then I remembered my father's old toolbox. It sat on a shelf in the garage, dented and red, still smelling faintly of oil and dust. My father had kept every spare key he ever owned. I lifted the tray inside and found a small envelope marked House Extras in his handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Most of the keys were old and useless, but one brass key looked new enough. I took it inside, waited until the house was quiet, and slipped it into the guest room lock. It did not turn. I tried again. Nothing. I almost cried from frustration. Then, as I turned away, I noticed something on the hallway floor near the baseboard. A tiny strip of cream leather, the luggage tag. It must have torn loose when Daniel pulled the suitcase inside. I picked it up. Only part of the name remained, but it was enough. Vanessa Cole. Below it was a phone number, and beneath that, in smaller print, an address in San Antonio. Not an office, an apartment. I stood in the hallway holding that torn luggage tag, feeling the last of my denial fall away. The suitcase did not belong to a client. It did not hold flooring samples. And whatever Daniel had hidden beneath the guest room bed was important enough for him to lie locked doors, grab my wrist, and make me doubt my sanity. That was the night I stopped asking myself whether my husband was having an affair. I began asking myself what else he was hiding. I called Lauren 3 times before she answered. That alone should have told me the day was not going to go the way I hoped. My daughter was a busy woman, and I knew that. She had a full-time job in Austin, 2 children with school activities, a husband who traveled often, and a house that always seemed to need something repaired. But a mother can still hear the difference between a missed call and an avoided one. When she finally picked up, her voice sounded breathless. "Mom, is everything okay?" I stood at the kitchen window looking out at the backyard gate Vanessa Cole had used like she belonged there. "I need to talk to you." There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. "Is this about Dad?" My fingers tightened around the phone. "Why would you ask that?" Lauren sighed softly, and in that little sound I heard something that made my stomach sink. Because she already knew something. Or worse, she thought she did. "Mom," she said carefully, "Dad told me you've been upset lately." I closed my eyes. "What exactly did he tell you?" "He said you've been anxious, suspicious, forgetting things." The words struck me one by one. Anxious, suspicious, forgetting. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. "Lauren, listen to me. Your father has been locking the guest room. He brought a woman into the house while I was at the doctor. I found her handkerchief. I found a luggage tag with her name on it. And yesterday, he brought a locked black suitcase into that room." Silence. Then my daughter said, "Mom." Just that. Not shock, not anger, not concern for me. A warning tone like I had stepped too close to something fragile. "Don't mom me like that," I said. "I know what I saw." "I'm not saying you didn't see something. Yes, you are?" "No, I'm saying maybe there's an explanation." "There is an explanation. Your father is lying." Lauren grew quiet again. I could hear children in the background, one of my grandchildren asking where his soccer cleats were. Life was moving normally in her house while mine was cracking open. "Dad said you've been under stress," she finally said. "Did he also tell you he grabbed my wrist when I tried to touch the suitcase?" That made her stop. "What?" "He grabbed me, Lauren." "He hurt you." The concern in her voice came too late, but I still clung to it. "He left a mark. It faded." "But that is not the point." "Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I was afraid you wouldn't believe me." Another silence. And there it was. The truth neither of us wanted to say. Lauren did not immediately believe me. I could feel it through the phone. She was trying to sound gentle, trying to be fair, but beneath every careful word was Daniel's voice. He had gotten to her first. He said, "You've been misplacing things," Lauren said. "He said you accused him of hiding your reading glasses." "I never accused him of that." "He said you got confused about the electric bill." "He was the one who got confused. I paid it." "He said you've been waking up at night and standing in the hallway." I almost dropped the phone. Because that part was true. But not the way he had made it sound. I stood in the hallway because there was light under the guest room door at 2 a.m. Lauren lowered her voice. "Mom, do you hear how that sounds?" It was as if my own child had slapped me. Not with anger. With pity. That was worse. I stepped away from the window and pressed my hand against my chest. "How does it sound, Lauren?" "It sounds like you're scared. And maybe when people are scared, they connect things that may not be connected." I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "You sound just like him. I'm trying to help." "No, you're trying to make this easier to dismiss. That is not fair. Neither is being lied to in my own house." My voice rose, and immediately I hated that it had. Because somewhere Daniel had probably told her I became emotional when questioned. Now I could feel myself proving the very portrait he had painted. So I inhaled slowly. "Lauren," I said softer, "your father is having an affair with a woman named Vanessa Cole. I believe he is hiding her things in the guest room." Lauren said nothing. "She is not just some decorator. She knew my name. She came through the backyard gate. She has been in this house more than once. Did Dad admit anything?" "No." "Do you have pictures? I have a handkerchief and a torn luggage tag." "That doesn't prove an affair." "It proves he lied." "Maybe." That word broke something in me. Maybe. After everything I had said, everything I had found my own daughter gave me, maybe. I sat at the kitchen table because my legs suddenly felt weak. "Do you remember when you were little?" I said, "and you used to sleep in that guest room during thunderstorms, Mom? You would run down the hall with your blanket and I would let you crawl into bed beside me. Your father would pretend to be asleep, but he always moved over to make room." I remember. That room was family. It was safety. Now he locks it from me, and you are asking me whether I have enough proof to be hurt. Lauren's voice softened. "I'm not asking you not to be hurt. I'm asking you not to make a decision you can't take back. What decision to accuse Dad of something this serious?" I stared at the framed photo on the wall across from me. Lauren on her wedding day smiling between me and Daniel. His hand rested on her shoulder. Mine held the edge of her veil. In that photograph, we looked like a family no lie could touch. Did he ask you to say that I asked? What did your father ask you to keep me calm? Lauren did not answer quickly enough. My throat tightened. Oh, Lauren, he called me because he was worried. When last week? Before the suitcase. Before Vanessa walked out of the yard. Before I had called her. Daniel had prepared the ground before I even knew I would need to stand on it. What did he say? Lauren exhaled. He said you've been acting different, that you're convinced he's hiding things, that you get upset when he leaves the house. He said he didn't want to scare me, but he thought I should know in case you called. In case I called? I repeated. My voice sounded hollow. He said he loves you. That nearly undid me, because that was Daniel's gift. He could wrap a knife in soft cloth and hand it to someone as if it were a bouquet. He told you I was becoming unstable. Lauren was quiet. He used that word, didn't he? He said emotionally unstable. Not mentally. He meant exactly what he needed you to hear. I stood slowly. The room seemed too bright, too sharp around the edges. Mom, please don't shut me out. I'm not shutting you out. I'm realizing I've already been shut out. That is not true. It is. Your father locked the guest room, hid another woman's suitcase, and then called you before I could. Not because he was worried about me. Because he was worried I would tell the truth. Lauren's voice trembled. I don't know what to believe. I closed my eyes again. That sentence hurt, but at least it was honest. Then believe this, I said. I am not confused. I am not imagining things. And I am not going to let your father make me disappear inside my own life. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Lauren whispered, What are you going to do? I looked toward the hallway. At the locked door, at the room where my husband's secret waited beneath the bed. I don't know yet, I said. But I'm going to start keeping records. Records, dates, times, what I see, what he says, everything. Mom, that sounds... Careful, I interrupted, not crazy. Careful, she did not argue. After we hung up, I sat for a long time with the phone in my lap. I had called my daughter hoping she would pull me back from the edge of loneliness. Instead, I learned Daniel had already been there before me building a fence. But he had made one mistake. He thought being doubted would make me quieter. It did the opposite. That night, I took a small notebook from the drawer beside my bed. On the first page, I wrote the date. Then I wrote 4 words. Daniel is lying to me. And beneath that, I wrote every detail I could remember. Not because I wanted revenge, because I finally understood that if the people I loved were being taught not to believe me, then the truth would need more than my voice. It would need evidence. Once I began writing things down, my fear changed shape. It did not disappear. Fear like that does not leave simply because you give it a notebook and a date. But it became less foggy, less like a dark cloud pressing against my chest, and more like something I could hold in my hands, examine, and name. I kept the notebook inside an old sewing basket in the laundry room. Daniel never touched that basket. For years, he had joked that thread and needles were women's mysteries, and for once, his carelessness worked in my favor. Every time something happened, I wrote it down. March 12th. Daniel checked guest room lock twice before leaving. March 13th. Unknown call from VC on Daniel's phone. March 14th. Daniel said I forgot emptying guest bathroom trash. I did not. March 15th. Found torn luggage tag Vanessa Cole apartment address. The handwriting looked calm. I was not. But each line reminded me that I was not imagining things. I was not unstable. I was a woman paying attention after too many years of being told not to. 3 days after my call with Lauren, Daniel left his navy blazer hanging over the chair in our bedroom. He had worn it the night before to what he called a client dinner. He came home late, showered immediately, and tossed the blazer aside as if he were too tired to care. That alone was unusual. Daniel had become careful with his clothes lately. Too careful. The next morning, while he was outside talking to a neighbor, I picked up the blazer. I told myself I was only going to hang it properly. That was a lie. I checked the pockets. The left pocket held nothing but a mint wrapper. The right pocket held a folded receipt. My fingers trembled before I even opened it. It was from a hotel near the River Walk. 1 night. King room. 2 guests. The name printed at the top was not Daniel Martinez. It was Robert Lane. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. Robert Lane. I read the name again and again as if it might change if I stared long enough. It did not. Beneath the name was the last 4 digits of a credit card I did not recognize. The date on the receipt was the same night Daniel had told me he was driving to Houston to visit an old work friend who was recovering from surgery. He had even asked me to pray for that friend. I sat on the edge of the bed holding the receipt between both hands. I had suspected an affair. I had found perfume messages, a handkerchief, a luggage tag, a suitcase. But something about that hotel receipt wounded me differently. Maybe because it was ordinary. A date, a room, a fake name, betrayal reduced to paperwork. I heard Daniel laughing outside with the neighbor, that warm public laugh people loved. It made my stomach turn. I took my phone from my pocket and photographed the receipt, front and back. Then I carefully folded it along the same creases and returned it to the blazer. When Daniel came back inside, I was in the kitchen rinsing grapes. "Frank says the Millers are selling their place," he said casually. "Are they apparently moving closer to their son?" He poured coffee, watching me. "You okay?" I looked up. "Yes." "Why, you seem quiet." "I'm thinking." His mouth tightened slightly. About what? I held his gaze. "Dinner." He smiled, then, relieved by the smallness of the answer. That was when I understood something else. Daniel had grown comfortable underestimating me. He believed that because I was hurt, I was helpless. Because I was older, I was easier to confuse. Because I had loved him for 32 years, I would keep choosing denial over dignity. He was wrong. That afternoon, while he took a shower, I called the hotel from the receipt. My heart pounded so loudly, I almost hung up before anyone answered. "Good afternoon," a cheerful woman said. "How may I help you?" I lowered my voice. "Yes. Hello. I'm calling about a stay under the name Robert Lane. I believe there may have been a billing mistake. Do you have the date of the stay I gave it to her? And may I ask your name?" I hesitated. "Cynthia." The woman typed for several seconds. "I do see a stay under Robert Lane for that evening." My throat tightened. Was the room booked for one guest or two? "I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't provide private guest details beyond confirming the reservation." "I understand." But she had already confirmed enough. Then almost kindly, she added, "If you have a copy of the receipt, the number of guests should be listed there." 2 guests. I thanked her and hung up. That evening, I wrote everything down. March 18th. Found hotel receipt in Daniel's blazer. Name used Robert Lane. Hotel confirmed reservation existed. Receipt lists 2 guests. Then I hid the copy of the receipt beneath the lining of my sewing basket. The name Robert Lane bothered me. It did not feel random. Daniel was not imaginative in that way. He used names that came from somewhere. Old coworkers, old streets, movie characters. I started searching my memory. Robert, Lane, nothing. Until 2 days later. The answer came in the mail. Daniel was in the backyard when I brought the envelopes inside. Most were ordinary grocery coupons, a water bill, a church newsletter. But one envelope stopped me cold. It was addressed to Robert Lane. At our house. There was no return name, only a post office box in Dallas. My hand went numb around the envelope. For several seconds, I simply stood in the foyer staring at it. A hotel receipt could be explained away with enough lies. Maybe a mistake, maybe a client, maybe something I had misunderstood. But mail addressed to Daniel's fake name arriving at my home was not a misunderstanding. It was a second life trying to enter through the front door. I carried the envelope to the laundry room and shut the door. I did not open it. That may surprise you. A part of me wanted to tear it open right there. But another part of me, the part growing stronger with every line in my notebook, knew I needed to be careful. If Daniel noticed it had been opened, he would know I was watching. And if he knew I was watching, he would become harder to catch. So I photographed the envelope, then I placed it back with the mail. When Daniel came inside, I was folding towels. A minute later, I heard the mail shuffle. Then, silence. Not normal silence. Alert silence. I stepped into the hallway and found Daniel standing near the kitchen counter holding the envelope. His face was still. Too still. "Anything interesting?" I asked. He slipped the envelope beneath the grocery coupons. "Junk." "From Dallas." His eyes lifted. "You read my mail now." "It was on the table. It isn't yours. It came to our house." He smiled thinly. "You really are watching everything lately." My blood chilled. "I sort the mail every day, Daniel. That is not watching." He picked up the envelope and folded it once sharply. "I'll handle it." "Who is Robert Lane?" For the first time, Daniel did not answer immediately. He looked at me for a long moment, and I could almost see him choosing which lie to use. "A client. What kind of client gets mail at our house? A private one." "That sounds convenient." His face darkened. "You need to stop digging through things you don't understand." "There seems to be a lot I don't understand." "You're right," he said quietly. "There is." The way he said it made the hair rise on my arms. Then he walked past me into the hallway toward the locked guest room. I followed far enough to see him unlock the doorstep inside and close it behind him. No click at first, then the lock. He had locked himself inside. For nearly 20 minutes, I heard him moving around. A drawer opened, papers rustled, something heavy slid across the floor. The suitcase. When he came out, the envelope was gone. That night, I waited until Daniel fell asleep. Then I slipped from bed, went to the laundry room, and opened my notebook. March 20th. Envelope addressed to Robert Lane arrived at our house. Daniel called it junk, took it into guest room. Hid it. I stared at the page. The affair was painful, but a fake name, a hotel receipt, and mail to my house meant something larger was happening. Something organized. Something planned. The next morning, I began checking financial papers. I did not know exactly what I was looking for, but I trusted that if Daniel had built a second life, he had left footprints somewhere. At the bottom of his desk drawer, beneath old warranties and appliance manuals, I found a bank envelope. Inside was a deposit slip. No account number showed except the last 4 digits. The name printed at the top was Robert Lane. My hands shook so badly I had to sit down. The amount deposited was not enormous, but it was enough to matter. Enough to hide. Enough to begin asking questions that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with money. That was when I finally understood the danger of the locked suitcase. It was not just holding evidence of another woman. It was holding the bridge between Daniel Martinez and Robert Lane. And whatever waited on the other side of that bridge was something my husband was willing to destroy me to protect. The night I heard Daniel whispering in the garage, I finally understood that my marriage had crossed from betrayal into danger. It was almost midnight. The house had been quiet for more than an hour, but I had not slept. Sleep had become difficult in those days. I would close my eyes and see the black suitcase beneath the guest room bed. I would hear Lauren's uncertain voice asking if maybe there was an explanation. I would see Daniel folding that envelope addressed to Robert Lane as if it were something alive. Beside me, Daniel's side of the bed was empty. At first, I thought he was in the bathroom. Then, I noticed the bedroom door was partly open, and from somewhere downstairs came the faint sound of his voice. Low, careful, secretive. I slipped out of bed and put on my robe. The hallway was dark, but I knew every board beneath my feet. I moved slowly, one hand against the wall, careful not to make the floor creak near Lauren's old room. Daniel was in the garage. The door between the kitchen and garage was not fully closed. A thin line of yellow light cut across the floor. I stopped just outside it and held my breath. His voice came through clearly enough. "She doesn't know about the suitcase," he whispered. "Keep it that way until after the paperwork is signed." My entire body went cold. The suitcase, the paperwork. Signed. For a moment I could not move. My mind tried to reject what I had heard because the meaning was too large to take in all at once. Daniel was not talking like a guilty husband hiding an affair. He was talking like a man following a plan. I leaned closer. "No," he said sharply, still keeping his voice low. "Lauren isn't there yet. She's worried, but she won't sign anything unless we handle Cynthia carefully." My name in his mouth sounded like a door closing. Then he listened. I pressed my hand over my chest, afraid even my breathing might betray me. "I told you," Daniel said. "The house is still in her name. That's the problem. The house, my parents' house, the home my father painted with his own hands, the home my mother filled with the smell of cinnamon coffee and Sunday beans, the home where I had raised my daughter, buried my parents' memories, and believed I would grow old safely." Daniel lowered his voice even more. "Yes, I understand what the valuation says. But without power of attorney, I can't move forward." Power of attorney. I knew those words. Not fully, not legally, but enough. Enough to know they had no place in a whispered midnight call unless someone was trying to take control. My knees weakened and I reached for the edge of the counter. The movement made the smallest sound, a soft tap. Daniel stopped talking. I froze. For several seconds there was only silence. Then he said, "I'll call you tomorrow," and ended the call. I moved as quickly as I could toward the sink, grabbed a glass, and turned on the faucet. By the time Daniel opened the garage door, I was filling it with water. He stood in the doorway, phone in hand. "What are you doing?" I did not look at him immediately. "Getting water." At midnight, I took a sip and forced myself to meet his eyes. I was thirsty. He watched me too long. There was no affection in his face, no concern, only suspicion. "I thought you were asleep. I thought you were too." A muscle moved in his jaw. "I had to make a call." "To whom?" "A client." At midnight, he stepped into the kitchen and closed the garage door behind him. Different time zone. That was almost funny. If my heart had not been beating so hard, I might have laughed. What kind of client talks about paperwork at midnight? His expression changed, just slightly. But he knew. He knew I had heard enough. "What did you hear?" The question was quiet. Too quiet. I set the glass on the counter. "Should I have heard something?" "Don't play games, Cynthia." The hypocrisy of that sentence almost took my breath away. "I'm tired," I said. "I'm going back to bed." I tried to pass him, but he did not move right away. For one terrifying second, he stood between me and the hallway. Then he stepped aside. As I walked past, he said, "You really need to stop wandering around the house at night." I did not answer. When I reached the bedroom, I closed myself in the bathroom and locked the door. Only then did I let my hands shake. I sat on the edge of the tub staring at the tile trying to arrange the pieces. Vanessa Cole was not just another woman. She was connected to the house. Evaluation, power of attorney, Lauren, paperwork, the guest room, the suitcase, and Robert Lane. The affair was not the end of the story. It was the curtain. Behind it, Daniel and Vanessa were building something far worse. I waited until Daniel came upstairs. I heard him enter the bedroom, pause near the bathroom door, then move away. He did not knock. That scared me more than if he had. He knew I was awake. He knew I had locked the door, and he chose silence. In the morning, he was almost cheerful. That was Daniel's talent. He could bury danger beneath pancakes. I was thinking, he said as he poured syrup over his plate. Lauren should come down next weekend. I looked up. Why? He smiled. Because she's our daughter. Does there need to be a reason there usually is with you? His fork stopped. Then he laughed softly. You've become very sharp lately. No, just attentive. His eyes met mine. That's what worries me. A chill moved through me. Me paying attention worries you? You twisting ordinary things worries me. I put my fork down. What ordinary things? He leaned back in his chair. Your sleep, your anxiety, these stories you're building around the guest room, your suspicion of me, your strange call to Lauren. My strange call? She called me Cynthia. She was upset. Of course she had. My daughter, worried and confused, had gone back to the man who had confused her in the first place. What did you tell her? I told her I loved you and that we need to support you. Support. Such a gentle word for a cage. I don't need support. I need honesty. Daniel looked almost sad then. I hope you're still able to recognize it. I stood from the table before I said something that would give him power. In the laundry room, I pulled out my notebook and wrote everything down while the words were still fresh. March 22nd, 12:03 a.m. Daniel in garage on phone. Exact words heard. She doesn't know about the suitcase. Keep it that way until after the paperwork is signed. Mentioned Lauren House still in my name, valuation, power of attorney. I underlined power of attorney twice. Then I sat back and stared at the page. There are moments in life when fear becomes a warning bell, and if you ignore it, you do so at your own risk. I had ignored small bells for months. The phone, the perfume, the locked door, the jokes about my memory, the way Daniel spoke for me before I could speak for myself. But this was no small bell. This was an alarm. I pulled an old folder from the cabinet where I kept my parents' papers, my mother's death certificate, my father's will, insurance documents, the deed transfer from years earlier. I found the property file tucked behind a stack of tax returns. My name was there. Cynthia Martinez. Not Daniel's. Mine. I touched the paper with trembling fingers. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to strength. Daniel could lie about another woman. He could use Robert Lane. He could whisper in the garage, charm Lauren, and make church friends laugh about my memory. But my father had left that house to me. And somewhere deep inside, I felt my father's voice as clearly as if he were standing beside me. Cindy, don't sign anything you don't understand. He had called me Cindy when I was little. I folded the deed copy and placed it in my sewing basket with the notebook. That afternoon, Daniel came into the laundry room while I was sorting towels. His eyes moved to the basket. What are you doing in here so much lately, laundry? He looked at the folded towels, then at me. You never used to spend this much time in here. I smiled gently. You never used to notice. He did not smile back. That night, I slept with the sewing basket in my closet, not because it was safe there, but because it held the only thing that had not been twisted yet, the truth. And I knew now that if Daniel needed my signature, he would eventually bring the paperwork to me. When he did, I intended to be ready. The next morning, I did something I had not done in nearly 20 years. I called Arthur Bennett. His name was written on the bottom of my parents' old will in faded blue ink beside the address of a law office downtown. Arthur had been my father's attorney, though my father always called him the only lawyer in Texas who still remembered how to speak like a human being. He had helped my parents put their affairs in order before my mother's illness got worse. He had handled the transfer of the house to me after they passed. I remembered him as a tall, soft-spoken man with silver hair and kind eyes, the sort of man who listened before he answered. I did not know if he still practiced, but I knew I needed someone who understood the house before Daniel tried to turn it into something I could lose. When the receptionist answered, my voice nearly failed. Bennett and Rowe Law Office. How may I help you? Yes, I said. My name is Cynthia Martinez. I'm trying to reach Mr. Arthur Bennett. He helped my parents years ago, David and Elena Reyes. There was a pause. Mr. Bennett is semi-retired, but he still comes in a few mornings a week. May I ask what this is regarding? I looked toward the hallway, even though Daniel had already left. My house, I said, and possibly my husband. The receptionist's tone changed. Softer. Can you come in today at 11? I said yes before. Fear had a chance to talk me out of it. For the next hour, I moved through the house like someone pretending to be normal. I washed 2 coffee mugs. I wiped the counter. I folded towels Daniel had not asked about. Then I took my sewing basket into the bedroom and locked the door. Inside the basket were the notebook, the torn luggage tag photographs of the hotel receipt, the envelope addressed to Robert Lane, the bank deposit slip, and a copy of the deed showing my name. I did not take the original deed. My father had always taught me never to carry originals unless necessary. Copies travel, he used to say. Originals stay safe. So I made more copies at the small printer in the closet, tucked them into a plain manila folder, and placed the folder inside my purse. Before I left, I stood in front of the guest room door. It was locked as always. I did not touch it, but I whispered, "Not yet." Arthur Bennett's office was in an older brick building near downtown San Antonio, not far from a row of cafes and small medical offices. The waiting room smelled faintly of coffee and lemon polish. On the wall hung framed certificates and a watercolor painting of the Riverwalk. For a moment, sitting there with my purse clutched in my lap, I felt foolish. Maybe Daniel had succeeded more than I wanted to admit. Maybe part of me still feared that if I told the story out loud, someone would look at me with that same careful pity Lauren had used. Then Arthur appeared. He was older, of course, thinner. His silver hair had turned nearly white and he walked with a cane, but his eyes were the same. "Cynthia Martinez," he said warmly. No one had called me by my full maiden name in years. Something in me nearly broke. "Mr. Bennett." "Arthur," he corrected gently. "Your father would haunt me if I let his daughter call me Mr. Bennett." I tried to smile, but my mouth trembled. He noticed. "Come in," he said. His office was lined with books, but not in a showy way. They looked used. Papers sat neatly stacked on his desk. A small photo of his wife and grandchildren stood near the lamp. After I sat, he did not rush me. That kindness alone almost undid me. Finally, I placed the folder on his desk. "I don't know how serious this is," I said, "but I'm afraid it may become serious very soon." Arthur opened the folder and began reviewing each item as I explained. I told him about the guest room, the lock, Vanessa Cole, the suitcase, the luggage tag, the hotel receipt under the name Robert Lane, the envelope, the bank deposit slip, the midnight call. When I repeated Daniel's words, Arthur stopped taking notes. "She doesn't know about the suitcase," he said quietly. I nodded. "Keep it that way until after the paperwork is signed." Arthur leaned back in his chair, his expression grave, and he mentioned power of attorney. "Yes. And valuation, yes. And the house still being in your name." I swallowed. "Yes." Arthur removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Cynthia, I'm going to ask you something plainly. Has Daniel ever asked you to sign anything recently? Not yet. Has he talked about estate planning? Medical care? Simplifying finances?" I thought back. He mentioned once that we should make things easier for Lauren if something happened to us. When, a few weeks ago. Before or after the guest room was locked. "After." His mouth tightened. "Do not sign anything Daniel gives you. Nothing. Not a birthday card if he places it beside legal papers." The firmness in his voice sent a chill through me. "So I'm not imagining this." Arthur looked at me over the folder. "No. Based on what you've brought me, you are not imagining this." Those words should have comforted me. Instead, they made me cry. Not loudly, not dramatically. Tears simply filled my eyes and fell before I could stop them. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Arthur pushed a box of tissues toward me. "Don't apologize for reacting to betrayal." I wiped my eyes. "My own daughter isn't sure she believes me. That may be part of the plan." Hearing him say it so calmly made my heart ache. He opened another file on his computer and asked for my address. After several minutes of searching county property records, he turned the screen slightly toward me. "There it is," he said. My name appeared on the record. Cynthia Martinez, owner. Not Daniel. Arthur tapped the screen. "This house was transferred to you through your parents' estate. From what I'm seeing, it remained your separate property. Daniel does not appear as an owner?" "I knew that," I said softly. "But Daniel knows it too." "Yes," Arthur said. "That may be why power of attorney matters." He explained carefully in simple words I could follow even through my fear. If Daniel could convince me to sign a durable power of attorney, giving him authority over my financial matters, he might be able to act on my behalf. If he could also build a story that I was mentally or emotionally unstable, he might try to pressure Lauren into supporting him. Could he sell the house without me? Not easily, Arthur said. Not if we act before he gets your signature or manufactures legal authority. But Cynthia, the danger is not only what he can legally do today, it's what he may be preparing to do tomorrow. My hands tightened around the tissue, and Vanessa Arthur looked at the luggage tag again. You said she claimed to be an interior consultant. Yes. Daniel said she was helping with the guest room. He typed her name into his computer. A few seconds later, his expression changed. What is it I asked? Arthur turned the screen again. Vanessa Cole's professional profile appeared. She was not listed as an interior consultant. She was a real estate agent. Luxury residential property, San Antonio and surrounding areas. For a moment, I could not breathe. She's a realtor, I whispered. Yes. The room tilted slightly. The guest room, the valuation, the house, the suitcase, the paperwork. Everything shifted into place with a sickening click. Arthur printed the page and added it to my folder. I'm also seeing a recent listing presentation associated with her firm in your general neighborhood, he said. I can't access private client files, but this is enough to concern me. Are they trying to sell my house? Arthur was quiet for a moment. I cannot prove that yet, but I believe Daniel may be preparing to obtain authority over your property, and Vanessa may be connected to a valuation or potential sale. My mouth went dry. He was going to take my parents' house. Arthur leaned forward. Cynthia, listen to me. He has not taken it, and he will have a much harder time now that you came here. Those words steadied me. For the first time in weeks, I felt less alone. Arthur made copies of everything I had brought. He told me to keep my originals hidden somewhere Daniel would never search. He advised me not to confront Daniel yet. Let him believe you are still unsure, he said. People reveal more when they think they are winning. That's hard. I know. I want to open that suitcase. Arthur's eyes sharpened. Not yet. Not unless you can do it safely and document what you find. I nodded, though every part of me wanted that suitcase open. Before I left, Arthur gave me his direct number. Call me if Daniel presents any document. Call me if Lauren is asked to sign anything. Call me if you feel unsafe. I placed his card in my purse. At the door, he stopped me. One more thing, Cynthia. I turned. Your father trusted you with that house. Trust yourself now. I drove home with both hands gripping the steering wheel. When I pulled into the driveway, Daniel's truck was already there. He was waiting on the porch, smiling. Where have you been? He asked. I smiled back, feeling Arthur's card inside my purse like a small shield. Running errands. Daniel studied my face. For once, I let him wonder. Daniel watched me from the porch as I stepped out of the car. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the warm Texas afternoon, not the neighbor's dog barking 2 houses down. Not even the way my hands were still trembling from everything Arthur Bennett had told me. I noticed Daniel's eyes. They moved from my face to my purse, then back again. For a man who claimed I was imagining things, he certainly looked worried about where I had been. Running errands, he asked. His tone was light, but there was nothing light behind it. I smiled the way he had smiled at me for weeks. Calm. Soft. Almost believable. Yes. What kind of errands? I climbed the porch steps slowly. Post office, pharmacy, a few things. You didn't bring any bags. I didn't buy much. He held my gaze for a long moment. Then he stepped aside to let me into the house. I felt Arthur's business card tucked inside my purse, pressed between my wallet and the folded copy of the property record. It was only a piece of paper, but it felt like armor. Inside the house smelled of coffee and furniture polish. Daniel had cleaned while I was gone. That was unusual. He had wiped the kitchen counters, straightened the living room pillows, and moved the stack of mail from the counter. The guest room door was closed. Locked, of course. I did not look at it too long. Daniel followed me into the kitchen. You seem different, he said. I placed my purse on a chair. Yes. Maybe I'm tired. Or maybe you talked to someone. My heart tapped once against my ribs. I turned toward the sink and filled a glass with water. Who would I talk to? That's what I'm asking. I took a sip before answering. I spoke to the pharmacist, Mrs. Delgado from church, the woman at the post office. He studied me. You're being clever. I set the glass down. No, Daniel. I'm being normal. The word landed harder than I expected. Normal. There had been a time when normal meant coffee together, grocery lists, Lauren's weekend visits, and Daniel falling asleep in his recliner. Now, normal meant hiding evidence in a sewing basket and speaking to my husband like he was a stranger standing too close. He smiled faintly. I have a dinner tonight. Another client. Yes. Anyone I know? No. Anyone named Vanessa? The silence between us sharpened. Daniel's face darkened, but only for a second. Then he exhaled as if I had disappointed him. I thought we were past this. No, Daniel, you hoped I was past this. He stepped toward me. I don't want to fight. Then don't lie. His eyes narrowed. For a moment, I thought he might explode. Instead, he looked away and adjusted his watch. I'll be home late, I'm sure. He left the kitchen without another word. That evening, Daniel dressed carefully. Navy blazer, white shirt, brown shoes. The same cologne he had worn the night he claimed he was visiting a sick friend in Houston. I stood in the bedroom doorway watching him. He caught my reflection in the mirror. You don't have to look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm guilty. I almost said, aren't you? But Arthur's warning echoed in my head. Do not confront him yet. So I only said, drive safely. He looked disappointed that I had not given him a bigger reaction. That told me something too. Daniel had grown used to controlling the temperature of every room. If I cried, he could call me unstable. If I shouted, he could call Lauren. If I begged, he could feel powerful. But calmness left him with nothing to use. When he finally left, I stood at the front window and watched his truck disappear. Then I waited. Not 5 minutes, not 10. I waited almost 40 minutes, long enough to be sure he had not forgotten something, and doubled back. Then I moved. I took my phone, my notebook, a flashlight, and the small envelope of old keys from my father's toolbox. Arthur had told me not to open the suitcase unless I could do it safely and document everything. This was as safe as it was going to get. The hallway felt longer than usual as I walked toward the guest room. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft tick of the wall clock in the living room. I knelt in front of the lock. The first key did not fit. Neither did the second. The third slid halfway in and stopped. My hands shook so badly I had to rest them in my lap. Steady, I whispered. The fourth key entered smoothly. I turned it. Nothing. I tried jiggling it gently. Still nothing. I almost gave up then. I almost told myself this was foolish, that I should wait for Arthur, wait for someone else, wait for permission to know the truth inside my own house. Then I remembered Daniel's hand around my wrist. I remembered Lauren saying she did not know what to believe. I remembered Vanessa saying my first name in my backyard. I tried the fifth key. It slid in, turned, clicked. The sound was so small, but to me it felt like thunder. For several seconds, I simply stared at the doorknob. Then I opened the door. The guest room smelled wrong. Not dusty, not unused, not like stored papers or construction samples. It smelled like perfume wine and someone else's skin. The bed was neatly made with sheets I had never bought. There were 2 pillows arranged against the headboard, both with faint impressions as if they had been used and fluffed again. A wine glass sat hidden behind a small lamp on the nightstand. The bathroom door stood slightly open, and inside I could see a makeup wipe in the trash. I took pictures of everything. The bed, the glass, the bathroom trash, the unfamiliar towel hanging behind the door. My hands were trembling, but the photos were clear. Then I knelt beside the bed and lifted the comforter. The black suitcase was there. It sat in the shadow like a sleeping animal. I pulled it out slowly. It was heavier than I expected. The wheels whispered across the carpet. The lock was a 3-digit combination. For a moment, despair washed through me. I had opened the room, but not the thing that mattered most. I tried Daniel's birthday. Nothing. Our anniversary. Nothing. Lauren's birthday. Nothing. Then a thought came to me so bitter I almost did not want to try it. Vanessa. I did not know her birthday, but I knew the torn luggage tag had part of her phone number. The last 3 digits were still visible. I entered them. Nothing. I sat back on my heels, breathing hard. Then I looked at the suitcase again. Daniel was not clever with secrets. He was confident, and confidence makes people lazy. I tried the last 3 digits of his fake name's bank deposit slip. The lock snapped open. For a moment I could not move. Then I lifted the lid. The top layer was exactly what I had expected and dreaded: a silk blouse, folded lingerie, a small bottle of perfume, a cosmetic bag, and a scarf that still carried Vanessa's scent. Beneath that were hotel receipts, printed emails, and several photographs of Daniel and Vanessa together. My stomach turned. In one picture, Daniel stood beside her outside a restaurant, his arm around her waist. In another, they were in the guest room. My guest room. The bed behind them. The same lamp. The same blue curtains my mother had sewn years before. I covered my mouth to keep from making a sound. Then I remembered Arthur. Document everything. I photographed each item before touching it. Under the photographs was a manila envelope. My name was printed on it. Cynthia Martinez. Not handwritten. Printed. Cold. Official. Inside were copies of property records, a draft durable power of attorney, and a document titled Cognitive and Emotional Function Concern Summary. I stared at the title until the words blurred. The summary described me as forgetful, anxious, suspicious, prone to nighttime wandering, and unable to manage financial decisions without family support. My husband had turned every lie he told about me into paperwork. Then I found another envelope. This one had Lauren's name on it. Lauren Martinez Whitaker. My hands went numb. Inside was a statement prepared for her signature. It said she had observed increasing confusion and emotional instability in her mother and supported Daniel Martinez's temporary management of household financial matters. I sat on the floor of that poisoned room, holding the paper meant to make my daughter a weapon against me. For one terrible moment, I could not breathe. Then my phone buzzed. I nearly screamed. A text from Daniel lit the screen. Forgot something. Heading back. I looked at the open suitcase, the scattered papers, the unlocked door, and for the first time that night, fear took over completely. For one frozen second, I stared at Daniel's text as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less terrifying. Forgot something. Heading back. My eyes jumped from the phone to the open suitcase, then to the papers spread across the guest room carpet. Vanessa's silk blouse lay beside copies of my property records. Hotel receipts sat on top of photographs I wished I could burn from memory. Lauren's unsigned statement trembled in my hand. I had imagined opening that suitcase many times. I had imagined pain. I had imagined anger. I had even imagined finding proof of Daniel's affair. But I had not imagined the panic of having only minutes to put a criminal little world back together before the man who built it walked through the door. I moved on instinct. First, I photographed Lauren's statement. Every page, every paragraph, every blank signature line where my daughter was supposed to help take my life away from me. Then I photographed the power of attorney draft, the cognitive concern summary, the property records, the emails between Daniel and Vanessa. One message made my stomach turn so violently I had to press my hand against the bed frame. Vanessa had written, "Once Lauren signs, Cynthia won't be able to fight the transition. Daniel, we have to move before she changes the locks or talks to someone." Transition. Such a clean word for theft. Another email mentioned a buyer who prefers off-market privacy and a quick close once authority is secured. My breath caught. They already had a buyer in mind. This was not a foolish affair between two selfish people. This was a planned stripping away of my home, my credibility, and my future. I took pictures until my phone warned me the battery was low. Then I forced myself to replace everything exactly as I had found it. Not perfectly. There was no time for perfect. But close. The blouse went on top, the cosmetic bag beside it, the photos under the envelope, the papers back inside. I shut the suitcase and spun the lock. My hands were slick with sweat. I shoved the suitcase under the bed, then stood and scanned the room. Wine glass, towel, bathroom trash, bedspread. I had photographed it all, but now I needed it to look untouched. I smoothed the comforter, straightened the pillow, picked up a tiny corner of paper I had dropped near the nightstand. Then I heard it. The garage door. Daniel was home. My chest tightened so sharply I almost doubled over. I shut off the guest room light and stepped into the hallway, pulling the door closed behind me. The lock clicked just as I heard Daniel's truck door slam. I ran to the kitchen, but running made noise, so I forced myself to slow down. By the time Daniel opened the door from the garage, I was standing at the sink, rinsing a mug with water I had not actually drunk. He stepped inside, carrying his phone and wearing the same navy blazer. His eyes went straight to me, then to the hallway, then back to me. "You're still awake." I turned off the faucet. "You texted me." "I texted that I was coming back. I didn't ask you to wait up." His voice was casual, but his eyes were already searching. "What did you forget?" I asked. "My wallet." I knew that was a lie because I had seen the outline of his wallet in his back pocket when he left, but I only nodded. "Did you find it?" He walked past me toward the bedroom. "Not yet." I stood perfectly still until he disappeared down the hall. I heard drawers open, a closet door. Then silence. Too much silence. He was not looking for a wallet. He was listening. I forced myself to move naturally. I dried the mug, put it away, wiped the counter. Every small sound felt enormous. Then Daniel returned. His face was unreadable. "Did you go into the guest room?" There it was. No warm-up, no pretense, just the question. I looked at him with as much confusion as I could manage. "What, the guest room? Did you go in there?" "How would I? It's locked." His eyes stayed fixed on mine. "That isn't what I asked." My heart pounded so hard I was sure he could see my blouse moving. "No, Daniel. I did not go into the guest room." I hated how easily the lie came. But then I remembered the lie he had written about me, anxious, confused, unstable, incapable. My lie was not betrayal. It was survival. Daniel moved closer. "Are you sure?" I gave a small laugh, soft and tired. You're asking me if I'm sure I didn't enter a locked room? He did not smile. Don't be cute. A week earlier, that tone would have made me shrink. Now it sharpened me. I'm going to bed, I said. I turned before he could answer and walked down the hall. I felt his eyes on my back the entire way. Inside the bedroom, I plugged my phone into the charger with shaking hands. The photos were still there. Dozens of them. I selected all of them and sent them to Arthur Bennett's direct email with only one line. Opened suitcase. Daniel came home. Please confirm you received these. Then I deleted the sent email from my phone. Not because I trusted myself less. Because I trusted Daniel not at all. For the next hour, Daniel stayed downstairs. I heard him enter the guest room. Heard the door close. Heard movement inside. Once something struck the floor with a dull thud. He knew. Or suspected. But suspicion was different from proof. When he finally came to bed, I kept my eyes closed. He stood beside me for a long time. I could feel him there. Then he whispered, Cynthia. I did not move. He waited. Cynthia. I made my breathing slow and heavy. After another minute, he went to his side of the bed. I did not sleep that night. At 6:18 the next morning, Arthur called. I answered in the laundry room behind the closed door. I received everything he said. His voice was low, serious. Cynthia, are you safe for now? Those documents are more serious than I expected. I gripped the phone. Are they enough? They are enough to act carefully, not recklessly. What does that mean? It means Daniel and Vanessa appear to be preparing documents to portray you as financially vulnerable or mentally unstable. The scanned signature samples concern me. The emails referencing a buyer concern me more. I closed my eyes. So they were going to sell the house. I believe they intended to position themselves to do that, yes. The words cut deep even though I already knew. Arthur continued, do not confront them alone. Do not tell Daniel what you found. And Cynthia, you need to understand something important. If they have scanned your signature, they may attempt to create documents without your cooperation. My stomach dropped. He copied my signature. From the photos you sent, it appears they may have sampled it from older cards or correspondence. I cannot confirm forgery without originals, but the risk is real. I thought of the Christmas cards I had signed for years, birthday cards, church checks, notes to Lauren, little pieces of myself Daniel had turned into tools. What do? We prepare before they do. I'm going to create a written notice revoking any unauthorized use of your signature and confirming that you have not granted Daniel power of attorney. I also want you to move your original deed and important documents out of the house. Where? A safe deposit box? Or my office temporarily? I looked toward the hallway. Daniel was upstairs showering. Today. I swallowed. All right. Arthur paused. One more thing. You need to call Lauren again. Pain moved through me. She doesn't believe me. Then don't ask her to believe your feelings. Show her facts, but not everything yet. Just enough that she does not sign anything Daniel gives her. I knew he was right. After we hung up, I opened my notebook and wrote one sentence. They planned to use Lauren before she understood she was being used. That was the cruelest part. Daniel had not only betrayed me as a husband, he had poisoned the space between mother and daughter, then placed a pen in Lauren's hand and aimed it at my life. I stood in that laundry room until the washer finished its cycle. Then I took the original deed, my parents' will, my birth certificate, and every document I could find that proved the house belonged to me. I placed them inside a grocery bag beneath a folded towel. When Daniel came downstairs freshly showered, he looked at the bag. Going somewhere, I lifted it slightly. Donation drop-off. His eyes narrowed. With towels? Yes, I said. Old ones. He stared for another second, then smiled. Let me carry it to the car. My hand tightened on the handles. No need. His smile faded. I'm only trying to help. I know. But I did not give him the bag. And as I walked out of the house with my parents' papers hidden beneath old towels, I understood something with absolute clarity. Daniel had tried to make me look helpless. But helpless women do not protect evidence. Helpless women do not call lawyers. And helpless women do not walk out the front door carrying the one thing their betrayer wanted most. Daniel chose Sunday dinner. That alone told me he was ready to make his move. For most families, Sunday dinner is comfort. For us, it had always been sacred. When Lauren was little, my mother came over after church with foil-covered pans and stories from her neighborhood. Later, when Lauren moved away, Sunday dinner became the meal we saved for visits, birthdays, apologies, and announcements, too important for phone calls. So when Daniel stood in the kitchen 2 days after I had moved my parents' papers to Arthur Bennett's office and said I think Lauren and Michael should come down this weekend, I knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted witnesses. He wanted warmth. He wanted the smell of roasted chicken and fresh tortillas to soften whatever paper he planned to slide across the table. I was standing at the stove stirring a pot of beans. I did not turn around. Why? Daniel opened the refrigerator, then closed it without taking anything out. Because she's our daughter. Because we haven't all sat together in weeks. Because maybe it would be good for you. There it was. Good for me. Not good for us. Not good for the family. For me. Like I was the patient and he was the caregiver. I turned off the burner. Did Lauren agree I spoke to her this morning? Of course he had. You called her before asking me. He gave me a tired look. Cynthia, I'm trying to bring this family together. No, you're arranging something. His eyes sharpened. See, this is what worries me. I almost smiled. He had one song now and he sang it whenever truth got too close. What time are they coming? I asked. The question seemed to surprise him. 5. I'll cook. Daniel studied my face. You're okay with it, I said. I'll cook. For the first time in weeks, he looked uncertain. He had expected resistance. Tears, maybe? Anger? Something he could use later as proof. Instead, I gave him dinner. By Sunday afternoon, the house looked like the home it used to be. I polished the dining table until the wood shone. I made chicken with peppers and onions, rice beans, and a small flan because my grandson loved it. I set out the blue plates my mother had saved for company. All the while, the locked guest room sat at the end of the hall like a sealed confession. Daniel wore a pressed shirt and his careful husband face. He moved around the house, offering help he did not mean. Need me to stir that? No. Want me to set the table? Already done. Cynthia, don't overdo it. I looked up from slicing limes. I've cooked Sunday dinner for 40 years, Daniel. I think I can manage. His mouth tightened. At 4:57, Lauren's SUV pulled into the driveway. My heart lifted and broke at the same time. Lauren stepped out first wearing jeans, a white blouse, and the worried expression of a daughter who had been told too many versions of one story. Michael followed with the children, who ran to me as soon as I opened the door. Grandma. For a few precious seconds, everything else disappeared. I hugged them both tightly. Their small arms around my waist nearly undid me. Lauren watched from the porch. Her eyes searched my face. Hi, Mom. Hi, sweetheart. She hugged me carefully as if I were fragile. I hated that, but I hugged her back anyway. During dinner, Daniel performed beautifully. That is the only word for it. Performed. He asked Michael about work. He complimented Lauren's haircut. He laughed with the children. He passed plates. He touched my shoulder twice in that gentle public way that made him look devoted. Anyone watching from outside would have seen a loving husband concerned for his wife. I saw a man setting a trap beside the salt shaker. After the children finished eating, Daniel suggested they watch a movie in the living room. Michael helped them choose something, then returned to the table with a cautious smile. The 4 adults sat beneath the dining room light. That was when Daniel folded his hands. I wanted us to talk tonight because I love this family. Lauren looked down. Michael glanced between us. I sat still. Daniel continued, his voice soft. Your mother has been under a lot of stress lately. Daniel, I said quietly. He lifted a hand, gentle but silencing. Please let me finish. There it was. The command hidden inside tenderness. He turned to Lauren. She's been anxious, suspicious, not sleeping well, wandering the house at night, misplacing things, getting upset over ordinary situations. Lauren's face tightened. Michael frowned. I folded my napkin in my lap. Daniel's voice grew warmer. I don't blame her. Aging is difficult. Losing your parents, getting older, facing health concerns, it can make anyone feel unsafe. My mother's blue plates sat between us. My father's house stood around us. And Daniel used their deaths as decoration for his lie. Lauren whispered, Dad, I'm not saying this to embarrass her, he said quickly. I'm saying it because pretending nothing is wrong doesn't help anyone. I looked at my daughter. She would not meet my eyes. Daniel reached down beside his chair and lifted a folder. There it was, the paper. I spoke with someone about a temporary family arrangement, he said. Nothing drastic. Just something to make sure bills are paid, documents are handled, and the house is protected. Michael sat up straighter. What kind of arrangement? Daniel opened the folder. A limited power of attorney. Lauren's eyes widened. Dad! It's temporary, he said. Just until Cynthia feels more like herself. More like herself. I almost laughed. The self he wanted was quiet, obedient, grateful, and legally powerless. Daniel slid one paper toward Lauren, and I also thought it would help if you, as her daughter, signed a short statement saying you've noticed some changes too. Nothing cruel, just honest concern. Lauren did not touch the paper. Michael reached for it first. Daniel's hand moved slightly, blocking him. It's really for Lauren. That one small movement changed Michael's face. He looked at Daniel differently then, not as a son-in-law trying to respect a family matter, as a man recognizing control. What exactly does it say? Michael asked. Daniel smiled tightly. It says what we all know, that Cynthia has been struggling. I looked at Lauren. Read it. My voice was calm. Daniel turned to me. Cynthia, this isn't the time to get defensive. I said, read it, Lauren. Lauren's hand trembled as she picked up the statement. Her eyes moved across the page. The color drained from her face. Dad, she whispered. This says Mom is emotionally unstable. Daniel leaned in. It says she has shown signs of instability. It says she needs financial oversight for protection. It says you should manage household assets. Temporarily. Michael took the paper from Lauren before Daniel could stop him. He read quickly, then looked up. Daniel, this is not just a family note. This is legal support. Daniel's jaw tightened. I expected you to understand. I understand enough to know nobody should sign this at dinner. For the first time, Daniel's mask slipped. This is family business. Michael's voice cooled. Then why does it look like a legal setup? The room went silent. In the living room, one of the children laughed at the movie. The sound made the moment even sharper. Daniel turned to me, and his voice softened dangerously. Cynthia, tell them. Tell them you've been overwhelmed. Tell them you know I'm only trying to help. Every eye moved to me. This was the moment he had planned. The moment where I would either cry, deny, or sound exactly like the unstable woman described on the page. So I did none of those things. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and took out my phone. I have something to play first. Daniel's face changed, only slightly. But Lauren saw it this time. What is that, he asked. My memory, I said. Then I pressed play. His voice filled the dining room. She doesn't know about the suitcase. Keep it that way until after the paperwork is signed. Lauren's hand flew to her mouth. Daniel stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. Turn that off. But I let it continue. The house is still in her name. That's the problem. Without power of attorney, I can't move forward. Michael stared at him. Lauren began to cry silently. Daniel looked at the phone as if he could destroy the truth by glaring at it. When the recording ended, no one moved. Then I looked at my daughter and said quietly, Now ask yourself why your father needed you to sign that paper. Daniel pointed at me. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Recording private conversations, sneaking around. This is not normal. No, I said. What isn't normal is hiding another woman's suitcase in my guest room while preparing documents to take my house. Lauren whispered. Suitcase, I stood. Daniel took one step toward me. Cynthia, don't. His voice held a warning, but this time I was not alone. Michael stood too. Let her talk. Daniel looked at him stunned. I turned toward the hallway. The suitcase is in the guest room, I said, and tonight everyone is going to see what Daniel has been guarding. For 32 years, I had watched Daniel control rooms. He controlled them with charm when charm worked, with silence when silence was stronger, with disappointment when he wanted someone to feel small, with that gentle, wounded expression that made people rush to comfort him before they ever asked who he had hurt. But that night, as I walked toward the guest room, I felt the room behind me shift away from him. Lauren followed first, then Michael. Daniel stayed near the dining table for one long second as if he could still command us back into place by refusing to move. But the recording had changed something. His voice had come out of my phone speaking words no concerned husband should ever say. She doesn't know about the suitcase. The house is still in her name. Without power of attorney, I can't move forward. Those words walked ahead of him now. The children were still in the living room, unaware of the storm opening down the hall. Michael paused and lowered his voice. I'll check on them. No, Lauren said, wiping her face quickly. Please stay. She looked at me. I need to see this. Her voice trembled, but this time it did not carry doubt. It carried dread. I stopped outside the guest room door. Daniel finally came up behind us. Cynthia, he said quietly, think very carefully about what you're doing. I turned. I have been thinking carefully for weeks. This will hurt Lauren. No, Daniel, you already did that. His face tightened. Lauren flinched as if the words had struck her too. I took the key from my cardigan pocket, the same old brass key from my father's toolbox. Daniel's eyes dropped to it, and for the first time he looked truly afraid. Where did you get that? My father believed in spare keys. I slid the key into the lock. Daniel stepped forward. Michael moved between us. Don't, Michael said. The word was calm but firm. Daniel stared at him. You are in my house. Michael looked at me, then back at Daniel. I'm in Cynthia's house. That was the first time anyone besides Arthur had said it out loud. Cynthia's house, not Daniel's, not ours. Mine. Daniel's face flushed. I turned the key. The lock clicked. Lauren covered her mouth. I opened the door. The smell hit us first. Perfume and wine beneath the faint scent of fresh linen. Lauren's eyes moved around the room, taking in details I had already photographed the bed too. Carefully made the wine glass behind the lamp, the unfamiliar towel, the makeup wipe still visible in the small bathroom trash. "Oh my God," she whispered. Daniel spoke quickly. "This is not what it looks like." Michael let out a humorless breath. "Daniel, that sentence has never helped anyone." I stepped inside and lifted the comforter. The black suitcase sat where I had left it beneath the bed. Daniel moved again. "Cynthia!" I looked at him. "What are you afraid of?" His eyes burned into mine. "You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing." I pulled the suitcase out and placed it in the center of the guest room floor. The wheels clicked softly against the wood beneath the rug. Lauren stared at it as though it were a body. Daniel's breathing changed. He looked toward the hallway, then toward the front door. For a moment I wondered if he would run. But men like Daniel rarely run before an audience. They perform until the curtain falls on their heads. "The code," I said. He said nothing, so I entered the numbers I had used before. The lock opened. Lauren began crying before I even lifted the lid. Maybe she already knew. Maybe daughters can feel the shape of a father's lie before they see it. I opened the suitcase. On top lay Vanessa's silk blouse, lingerie, perfume, and cosmetics. Beneath them, the photographs. I lifted one and handed it to Lauren. Her hand shook so violently, Michael reached to steady her. The photo showed Daniel and Vanessa standing in this very room, smiling with the ease of people who believed no one would ever see them. Lauren stared at her father. "Dad." Daniel's face hardened. "It was a mistake. A mistake." Her voice cracked. "You brought her into Mom's house." I was lonely. Those 3 words nearly made me laugh. Lonely. He had a wife who cooked his meals, washed his clothes, slept beside him, defended him in her own mind long after truth had begun knocking. But loneliness sounded better than greed, so he reached for it. "I made a terrible mistake," he continued, "but your mother is turning it into something else." I reached into the suitcase and removed the first envelope. "Then explain this." I handed Michael the draft power of attorney. He read it, his jaw tightening with every line. "This gives you broad financial control over Cynthia's assets," he said. Daniel shook his head. "It was never going to be used unless necessary." "Necessary for what I asked." He looked at me with hatred carefully dressed as concern. "For your protection." I reached for the next document. The cognitive and emotional concern summary. Lauren took it before Michael could. As she read, her tears slowed. That was worse than crying. Her face changed from hurt to horror. "This says Mom wanders at night," she whispered. Daniel said, "She does, because you were in the garage whispering about paperwork." He did not answer. Lauren looked down again. "This says she forgets bills." I was concerned. "She paid the electric bill. You told me she forgot." Daniel's mouth opened, but no sound came. I handed her the next envelope. Her name was printed on it. Lauren Martinez Whitaker. She looked at me first as if asking permission. I nodded. She opened it and removed the statement prepared for her signature. As she read, her face crumpled. "No," she whispered. Michael leaned over her shoulder. Lauren backed away from Daniel. "You wanted me to sign this." Daniel lifted both hands. "I wanted you to help your mother." "No," she said louder. "You wanted me to say she was unstable. For her safety. For your paperwork." The force in Lauren's voice brought the children running to the hallway. Michael quickly stepped out. "Kids back to the movie? Everything's okay." But everything was not okay, and even children can feel when adults are lying about peace. Once Michael guided them back, Lauren faced Daniel again. "You called me first," she said, "before Mom ever told me anything. You told me she was confused. You told me she was suspicious. You made me doubt her." Daniel's eyes flicked to me. She was acting irrationally. She was right. Silence. Those 3 words filled the room more powerfully than the recording had. She was right. I did not realize how badly I needed to hear them until my knees nearly weakened. Lauren turned to me, tears spilling again. "Mom, I am so sorry. I wanted to go to her. I wanted to hold her and say everything was forgiven right there. But the truth was still open on the floor between us, and forgiveness could not be used as a broom." "Keep reading," I said softly. She nodded. I removed the printed emails between Daniel and Vanessa. Michael read them aloud, not every word, only enough. "Buyer, off-market, quick close, once authority is secured." Lauren pressed both hands to her mouth. Daniel snapped, "Those were preliminary discussions." Michael looked at him. "You discussed selling a house you don't own." "I am her husband. You are not the owner." Daniel's face twisted. "I maintained this house for 30 years. My parents bought this house." I said, "My father fixed this house. My mother died in this house. I raised our daughter in this house. You lived here because I loved you." That landed. Daniel looked away first. I reached into the suitcase one final time and pulled out the hotel receipts under Robert Lane, the bank deposit slip, and the copies of my signature samples. "Robert Lane," I said. Lauren frowned. "Who is that, your father?" Daniel said sharply. "That is enough." "No," I replied. "Enough was months ago. Enough was the first locked door. Enough was the first lie. Enough was when you made our daughter think her mother was losing her mind." Lauren looked at the signature pages. "Are these Mom's signatures?" "Copied," Michael said quietly. Daniel's face paled. They were examples. For what Michael asked. Daniel did not answer. He did not need to. The room answered for him. I took my phone and called Arthur Bennett. Daniel's head snapped toward me. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done sooner." Arthur answered on the second ring. "Cynthia." "It's time I said." Daniel stepped toward me, but Michael blocked him again. Arthur's voice became firm. "Is Daniel there?" "Yes. Put me on speaker." I did. Arthur's voice filled the guest room. "Mr. Martinez, this is Arthur Bennett, counsel for Cynthia Martinez. I have received copies of the documents in that suitcase. Cynthia has not authorized you to act on her behalf, has not granted power of attorney, and has not consented to any sale transfer valuation arrangement or financial control regarding her separate property." Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. Arthur continued. "Any attempt to use copied signatures, third-party statements, or unauthorized documents will be treated as a legal matter." Lauren stared at her father as if seeing him for the first time, and maybe she was. Daniel looked around the room searching for the old power, but there was none left. Not in Lauren's eyes, not in Michael's silence, not in my house. The suitcase sat open on the floor, spilling out the life he had tried to hide. And finally, Daniel had nowhere left to put the truth. Daniel did not speak for several seconds after Arthur Bennett's voice filled the guest room. That silence told me more than any confession could have. A man who has been misunderstood rushes to explain. A man who has been falsely accused becomes angry in a different way with shock and wounded disbelief. But Daniel stood there with his mouth slightly open, staring at the open suitcase as if the real betrayal was not what he had done but that I had found it. Arthur's voice remained steady through the phone. "Cynthia, are Lauren and Michael present?" "Yes," I said. "Good. I want everyone there to hear this clearly. Cynthia has not signed any document giving Daniel Martinez authority over her property, finances, or legal decisions. Any document suggesting otherwise should be treated as unauthorized unless verified directly through me." Daniel finally found his voice. "This is ridiculous. You don't represent her in our marriage." Arthur answered calmly. "I represent her legal interests. You're filling her head with nonsense." "No, Mr. Martinez. You filled a suitcase with documents you had no right to prepare." Lauren let out a small broken sound. Daniel turned toward her immediately as if he could still rescue himself through fatherhood. "Lauren, sweetheart, listen to me." She stepped back. "Don't call me sweetheart right now." The words seemed to stun him more than Arthur's warning. For all his lies, Daniel had counted on one thing above everything else: Lauren's loyalty. He had spent weeks shaping her doubts, feeding her concern, making himself look like the tired, devoted husband trying to hold a fragile family together. But a lie can only stand until the person it was built inside finally sees the framework. Lauren held the statement meant for her signature in both hands. "You wanted me to help you do this to Mom." Daniel shook his head quickly. "No, I wanted you to help protect her. Stop saying protect." Her voice cracked. "You were going to use me. I was trying to keep this family from falling apart. You are why it's falling apart." His face hardened. "You don't understand marriage." "No," she said. "I don't understand cruelty." Michael stood beside her, his hand gently on her back. He looked at me. "Cynthia, do you want him to leave?" The question hung in the room. For 32 years, Daniel had never needed permission to stay. His clothes were in the closet, his books were on the shelves, his truck sat in the driveway. His name was on holiday cards, church envelopes, insurance papers, and family memories. But the house was mine, and for the first time, everyone in that room knew it. I looked at Daniel. "Yes," I said, "I want him to leave tonight." Daniel laughed once, sharp and ugly. "You can't throw me out of my own home." I did not raise my voice. "It is not your home." His eyes flashed. "I paid bills here." "So did I. I repaired this place. My father built half of what you repaired. I'm your husband. You stopped being my husband when you brought another woman into my guest room and planned to take my house." His face changed then. Something desperate broke through the anger. "You think I wanted it to happen this way?" I stared at him. That was the closest he had come to admitting anything. Lauren whispered, "What does that mean?" Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. When he looked up, his eyes were wet, but I no longer trusted his tears. I had seen him cry at Lauren's wedding. I had seen him cry at funerals. I had also seen him smile while preparing papers to make me disappear. Vanessa pushed things, he said. There it was, the escape door. She said we needed options. She said if Cynthia kept getting worse, I was not getting worse, I said. He ignored me. She said the house could solve a lot of problems. We could downsize. Cynthia could be somewhere easier to manage. Lauren's face twisted. Somewhere easier to manage? I didn't mean it like that. You mean an apartment, I said quietly. That was in the email. Daniel looked at me. For the first time that night, his expression held real fear. You read everything? No, I photographed everything. Michael's eyebrows lifted slightly. Daniel noticed and went pale. Arthur spoke again from the phone. That was wise. Daniel turned toward the phone. You stay out of this. Arthur's voice sharpened. Mr. Martinez, I strongly advise you to leave the property voluntarily tonight. Cynthia has enough documented concern to pursue immediate protective legal steps if necessary. Are you threatening me? I am informing you. For several seconds, Daniel looked around the room again, trying to locate an ally. There were none. Not Lauren, not Michael, not me. Even the house seemed against him, every family photograph in the hallway witnessing what he had tried to do. Then Daniel's shoulders dropped. I need my things. You can pack a bag, I said. Michael will go with you. Daniel looked insulted. I don't need supervision. Yes, Michael said. You do. Daniel glared at him, but he did not argue. Before he left the room, he turned to Lauren. You're really choosing this? Lauren wiped her face with the back of her hand. I'm choosing the truth. His mouth tightened. I'm your father, and she is my mother. Those words settled something in me I had not known was still shaking. Daniel walked past us toward the bedroom. Michael followed. The moment they were gone, Lauren collapsed into me. Not gracefully, not gently. She came apart like a child. I'm sorry, she sobbed. Mom, I'm so sorry. I believed him. I thought maybe you were confused. I thought I was helping. I held her, but my arms felt heavy with the truth of everything we had survived to get to that embrace. I know, I whispered. I should have listened. Yes, I said softly. You should have. She pulled back, startled by my honesty. I touched her cheek. But he knew exactly where to hurt us. He used your love for both of us against you. Her tears fell harder. I almost signed it, but you didn't. Only because you stopped me. No, I said. Because when the truth was in front of you, you chose to see it. That mattered. Not enough to erase the wound, but enough to begin somewhere. In the bedroom, drawers opened and closed. Daniel's footsteps were heavy, angry. Michael's voice stayed low, steady. I heard Daniel say something I could not make out. Then Michael answer, pack the bag. Arthur stayed on the phone until Daniel returned with a duffel bag. He looked smaller. That surprised me. For months, fear had made Daniel seem larger than he was. His silence filled rooms, his anger blocked hallways. His lies reached ahead of me into my daughter's life. But standing there with one bag in his hand and no one left to fool, he looked like an ordinary man who had mistaken control for love. He stopped near the front door. Cynthia. I did not answer. He looked at me with the face I had loved for most of my adult life. You're really going to end 32 years like this? The question was so cruel I almost smiled. No, Daniel. You ended it. I'm only refusing to keep living inside the ending. His eyes filled again. I made mistakes. I looked toward the hallway, toward the guest room. Mistakes don't come with fake names, locked suitcases, scanned signatures, and buyers. He flinched. Lauren stood beside me. Michael stood near the door. Daniel waited maybe for one final softness from me, one final opening, one final chance to turn sorrow into negotiation. I gave him none. Leave your house key on the table, I said. His jaw tightened. Then he removed the key from his ring and placed it on the small entry table where my mother used to keep fresh flowers. The sound of metal touching wood was quiet, but it felt like the closing of a chapter. After Daniel drove away, I locked the door behind him. Then I leaned my forehead against it and let myself breathe. Not cry. Not yet. Just breathe. Arthur told me what would happen next. First, he would file notice that Daniel had no authority over my property. Then, he would contact Vanessa Cole's brokerage regarding the documents and emails. He would help me freeze joint accounts, protect my signature, and begin divorce proceedings. If forged documents appeared, they would be treated seriously. Vanessa, he said, had exposed herself the moment she put real estate plans in writing. By the following week, her brokerage had suspended her pending review. Daniel's separate bank activity under Robert Lane became part of Arthur's file. The buyer mentioned in the email backed away as soon as legal questions surfaced. Daniel lost the plan before he could spend the money. And Vanessa lost interest in Daniel faster than I expected. That hurt him, I think. Good. But I did not celebrate. People think justice feels like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like sitting at your kitchen table after everyone leaves, looking at cold dinner plates and realizing the life you had yesterday is gone. Lauren stayed that night with Michael and the children. After the children fell asleep, she washed dishes beside me in silence. Finally, she said, "Do you hate me?" I looked at her hands in the soapy water. "No. Do you forgive me?" I took a long breath. "I want to." She nodded, crying quietly. "That's fair." It was fair. And for the first time in a long time, fairness felt like enough. Before bed, I walked down the hallway to the guest room. The suitcase still sat open on the floor, ugly and exposed. I did not touch it, not because I was afraid of it anymore, because it no longer belonged to Daniel's secret. It belonged to my evidence. And by morning, Arthur Bennett would have it. The morning after Daniel left the house sounded different. At first, I thought it was because I had barely slept. Every noise seemed too sharp, the refrigerator humming, the old pipes ticking behind the bathroom wall, a mockingbird calling from the oak tree outside the kitchen window. But then I realized what was missing. No footsteps checking the guest room lock, no phone buzzing in Daniel's pocket, no careful sigh from across the table preparing to make me doubt myself. The silence was not empty, it was free. Lauren was asleep on the living room sofa when I came downstairs. One of the children had curled up beside her during the night, his small hand resting on her arm. Michael had taken the recliner, still wearing his jeans, his neck bent at an uncomfortable angle. I covered him with a throw blanket before starting coffee. For a few minutes, I stood in my own kitchen and let myself remember what it had been before secrets lived there. My mother rolling masa at the counter. My father reading the newspaper near the window. Lauren sitting on the floor as a little girl building towers out of plastic cups. Daniel laughing beside the stove back when I still believed his laughter belonged only to our life. That last memory hurt. I did not try to push it away. Healing, I would learn, does not begin by pretending nothing was real. The love had been real. The years had been real. The photographs had captured real birthdays, real vacations, real Sunday dinners. That was what made the betrayal so painful. Daniel had not destroyed an illusion. He had poisoned something that once had been true. Around 8, Arthur Bennett arrived. He wore a gray suit and carried 2 document bags. Lauren stood beside me when I opened the door. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. Arthur greeted her kindly, but he did not soften the purpose of his visit. "We need to secure the suitcase and any related documents," he said. "Cynthia, are you ready?" I looked toward the hallway. Ready was not the word, but I nodded. Together we walked to the guest room. Daniel's secret room. Vanessa's hiding place. The room my grandchildren used to call Grandma's special room. The suitcase sat where we had left it, open and ugly under the morning light. Somehow it looked less frightening now. The night before, it had seemed powerful, full of the things Daniel thought could ruin me. In daylight, it was just a container. Plastic, zippers, paper, evidence. Arthur photographed the room again, then packed the contents carefully. He labeled each envelope, each document, each receipt. Lauren watched silently as her unsigned statement went into a clear folder. When Arthur lifted it, she whispered, "Can I see it one more time?" He looked at me. I nodded. Lauren held the paper with both hands. She read the words again slowly, as if punishing herself. Then she looked at me. "I hate that my name is on this." "So do I. I hate that I almost believed it." I touched her arm. "Then remember that feeling, not to hurt yourself with it, to make sure no one ever uses your love against your judgment again." She began to cry, but quietly this time. Arthur took the document back and sealed it away. By noon, the suitcase was gone. So were the original property papers from my house. Arthur had them locked safely at his office. He had already filed notice, making it clear Daniel had no authority to act for me. He had contacted my bank and helped me begin separating accounts. He had also sent formal communication to Vanessa Cole's brokerage. The machinery of consequences had begun, but consequences did not clean the guest room. I did. Not that day. That day I closed the door and left it alone. For 2 weeks I slept badly. I woke expecting Daniel's truck in the driveway. Sometimes I reached across the bed and found the empty space beside me before remembering emptiness could be mercy. Lauren called every day. At first our conversations were awkward. She apologized too much. I reassured her less than she wanted. That may sound cruel, but forgiveness given too quickly can become another way women are asked to make everyone else comfortable. I loved my daughter. I knew Daniel had manipulated her. I also knew the wound between us needed honesty, not a ribbon tied around it. One evening she said, "Mom, I don't know how to fix this." I answered, "You don't fix trust with one apology. You rebuild it by showing up." So she did. She drove down from Austin every Saturday for a month. Sometimes she brought the children. Sometimes she came alone. We cooked, we cried, we sorted through closets. She listened when I told her how it felt to hear her doubt me. I listened when she told me how frightened Daniel had made her for me. He sounded so worried, she said once sitting at my kitchen table. I know. He made me feel like if I didn't help him, I was abandoning you. I looked at her across the same table where he had tried to make her sign that statement. That is how control disguises itself. It calls itself love. Those words stayed with both of us. The divorce moved forward. Daniel tried briefly to present himself as a misunderstood husband who had made emotional mistakes. But Arthur had the photos, emails, documents, fake name deposit slip, and recording. Daniel's attorney quickly stopped using the word misunderstanding. Vanessa disappeared from Daniel's life almost immediately. I heard through Arthur that her brokerage had opened an internal investigation and that the attempted off-market buyer wanted nothing to do with either of them. Whether she faced professional consequences beyond that, I never cared enough to chase. My peace did not require watching her fall. Daniel called me twice. I did not answer. He left one voicemail. Cynthia, after everything we built, I think I deserve a conversation. I deleted it. A man who plans your silence does not get to demand your listening. Eventually, I opened the guest room again. I stood in the doorway for a long time, breathing through the memories. Then I stripped the bed. I removed the curtains my mother had sewn and washed them twice, not because they were dirty, but because I needed my hands to do something with the grief. I donated the bed frame. I threw away the wine glasses. I scrubbed the bathroom floor on my knees until Lauren gently took the brush from my hand. Mom, she said, let me. This time I did. We painted the walls a soft, warm cream. Michael installed new shelves. The grandchildren helped choose a rug with blue flowers. I moved my sewing machine near the window and placed my favorite reading chair in the corner. On one shelf, I put my mother's old recipe box. On another, my father's brass key ring. The guest room became my room. Not a bedroom anymore. A reading room. A sewing room. A room for prayer, quiet, and remembering who I was before someone tried to rewrite me. The first afternoon I sat there alone, sunlight spilled across the floor. I made tea in my mother's cup and opened the window. Outside, the rosemary bush moved in the breeze. For the first time in months, I did not feel watched. I did not feel doubted. I did not feel like evidence waiting to be dismissed. I felt like Cynthia Martinez, a woman who had been betrayed, yes, but also a woman who had listened to the small voice inside her when everyone else told her it was confusion. A woman who opened the suitcase, a woman who kept the house, a woman who finally understood that peace is not the absence of pain. Sometimes peace is simply the sound of your own front door locking behind the person who tried to break you. Sometimes the deepest betrayal does not come from a stranger. It comes from the person who knows exactly where your heart is softest, where your memories live, and what you are most afraid to lose. Cynthia did not lose her peace because she was weak. She almost lost it because she trusted someone who used love as a disguise for control. But her story reminds us of something powerful. Getting older does not make a woman helpless. Being quiet does not mean being blind, and being hurt does not mean being defeated. Cynthia's strength did not come from shouting louder than Daniel. It came from listening to her instincts, protecting the truth, gathering evidence, and refusing to let anyone rewrite her reality. One of the hardest lessons in life is learning that love without honesty is not love at all. A locked room, a hidden suitcase, a fake name, a cruel lie whispered to family. None of those things belong in a marriage built on respect. Real love does not make you question your sanity. Real love does not isolate you from your children. Real love does not ask you to sign away your home, your voice, or your dignity. Cynthia's victory was not just keeping her house. It was finding herself again inside the very place where someone tried to erase her. She turned a room of betrayal into a room of peace. She turned pain into proof. And she showed that justice does not always arrive with revenge. Sometimes justice is simply locking the door behind the person who tried to break you and finally feeling safe in your own home again. If Cynthia's story touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done if you found that locked suitcase? Would you have forgiven Lauren? Share your feelings in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. If stories about family betrayal, strength, and healing speak to you, please subscribe and stay with us for the next story.